Welcome to CC Writes. My name is CC Lepki, and today I'm working on the storyboard and paneling of my webcomic, Wooble the Human. If you've been following along, you'll know that I decided to enter a short story webcomic contest. I started off by planning out my story, turned it into a detailed description, and used the detailed description to create a story map and script. I'm really proud of the work I've come up with, and I've even used your comments to help influence the end result of my script. So thank you all for engaging with me in the comments. It really means a lot. Now, I'm not terribly skilled at paneling comics. I've written a few webcomics in the past, but it takes so much time and effort that I always end up giving up in the end. But this time, I wanted everything to be in place and all of my decisions to be intentional to reduce the effort I needed to get through all of the work that is needed to complete this story. That's actually why I decided to use a storyboard in the first place. With a storyboard, I can draw out everything the way I want, then more easily visualize how the story should flow together. I hope I'm right about that, but I guess we'll see. Since art projects tend to take a really long time, I'm just going to show how everything goes for the first storyboard and the first page of the webcomic. I went ahead and made a storyboard document in Photoshop and masked out each panel of the storyboard so I could just drop the images in that I wanted into place without having to worry about cutting it all down. This isn't a learn how to use Photoshop tutorial, but I'll explain later how I did that when I'm actually working on the panels for the comic. The first thing I did for the storyboard is search for the physical location that I wanted my story to be set. I knew it needed to be in Portland, Oregon, somewhat near downtown and close to a graveyard because all of those were elements within the story. So I did a quick Google search and found an area that fit all of those parameters. Once I knew the area I needed to focus on, I started searching for apartments nearby. It needed to be something small and relatively inexpensive for the area since the characters aren't affluent. Basically, I needed a place that a small business owner just starting out might be able to afford. And I lucked out because not only did I find an apartment that was perfect as a base model for the story, the website had a feature where I could virtually walk around in the apartment and see it from different angles. So not only did I have something that would allow me to more easily visualize the apartment, but it made it way easier to stage everything perfectly to fit my needs. I used the script to figure out which room I needed to be in and what was happening, and then I used the 3D model of the apartment to stage it. I took screenshots and dropped them into the storyboard. After I had all of the screenshots at my preferred angles dropped in, I did a quick search for some furniture to put in the apartment. The furniture was really going to help make the background feel substantial, so I wanted it to be perfect. Once my screenshots were furnished, I did a really basic sketch on top of the screenshot to model out where my characters were and what they were doing. And finally, I gave myself a bit of basic instruction for how the panels should be laid out. I decided the panel layout based on the visual storytelling. There are certain elements that have to happen in sequence, so I grouped those shots together, and then I ended up with 3 separate groups. And after having read comics basically my entire life, I had a basic idea of how to arrange 7 panels into something somewhat aesthetically pleasing. And now that I knew how to lay out the panels, I opened a new document and started creating them. To create the panels, I used the marquee tool to make a rectangle selection area. Then I went to Edit, Stroke. I made sure the stroke was on the inside and at the thickness that I wanted, which in this case was 3 pixels. I duplicated the layer and made the rest of the panels for the comic and the arrangement that I thought would work best. Then I created a series of groups and renamed them by panel order. I selected each panel one by one by selecting the area outside of them and then using Ctrl-Shift-I to invert the selection. This makes it so that the image will go to the very edge of the panel and not get clipped. Once the panel I wanted was selected, I highlighted the corresponding group it belonged to and used the Layer Mask button to create a mask. Now, anything that I put inside of that group will only show up inside of the panel. I repeated the process until all of my panels were created, and then I merged the original panel layers together and moved them to the top layer. This is really important because if you don't do this, then the pictures inside the layers will clip over the top of your panel lines and it will look really stupid. Now I had my panels, so I went to the storyboard and dragged and dropped them into place. I reduced the opacity so I could use it as a base sketch and make my life a million times easier. That done, I got started on the line work. I traced over the background I set up with a few minor adjustments as needed. I'd already chosen a character design for the most important characters in the story, so I just used my reference to draw the characters in as needed. I ended up with a nice mixed image drawing of cartoonish looking characters with a solid realistic background. It almost has an anime feel to it with the American style cartooning, which I really appreciated. It was also super easy to make the characters feel as if they were really a part of the space. I am a terrible background artist, so everything about this process made me feel a lot more comfortable. Once the line work was finished for all of my panels, I went in and colorized everything. Now, this is where I made an important decision in the look and feel of my comics. I wanted the focus of my story to be on the characters. The backgrounds are super detailed, which is difficult to paint in, and when finished, it sort of takes the attention away from the characters. I'm doing an American style comic, which means the camera will typically focus on the people rather than the surroundings. There are very few wide shots involved, and it's pretty straightforward storytelling. In anime, wide shots, images of the surroundings, and even nearby objects tend to establish the feeling of the story. This is completely different from Western storytelling, so the complex and beautifully rendered images are really important. I decided that instead of coloring in the background with faithful detail, I would instead use solid colors for the backgrounds and only colorize the characters and the things that they're holding. This way I can have the nice solid feel of anime, but with a character-focused story. My backgrounds will feel solid and realistic, but they won't detract from the characters. At least that's the hope. It took me a while to settle on the background color, but once I did, I was really happy with the choice to go from dark to light to reflect the emotional experience that's occurring in the story. I colored in my characters, which took a lot longer because I hand painted it rather than use the selection or fill tool. When I use those tools, I always end up noticing gaps that don't get filled in with the end product, so hand painting is typically the best option for me. With the coloring all done, I tried out a couple of different methods for creating speech bubbles before I settled on using the oval marquee tool and the polygonal selection tool to create the speech bubble shape that I wanted. I filled it all in with text and played around with different font styles until I had something that felt hand-lettered but still easy to read. I like the hand-lettered look in comics, especially in the more cartoony style like what I'm going for. It just makes everything feel really organic. So when it was all done, I just zoomed out and admired my work. I am really happy with the end result of this comic. It took me 4 hours to do the first page, but most of that time was spent on research. I tried out a second page and it only took me 2 hours to complete, so I really think that I'll be able to realistically get this story finished before the contest deadline. I have to say, I think this is one of the better stories I've written in a while. Seeing the tangible results of my work start to take shape is really rewarding. I can't wait to finish the rest of the pages and share it with everyone. When I do have it finished, I'll post a link to my Twitter account so you can participate and help my comic rise in the contest rankings. I've said it before, I don't really expect to win this contest. I'm an amateur artist at best, and there are a lot of people in the contest already that have a much bigger following than I do. But this is a great writing exercise, and it's been a really nice way to blow off steam with everything that's going on in the world. Ultimately, I just hope that my readers enjoy the story as much as I do. That's it for today. Thanks for watching CC Writes. I hope you enjoyed your time with me today. If you'd like to support my work, you can find my books on Amazon.com. You can also support me by making a donation to the CC Writes Patreon page. There are links in the description below. For more everyday content about my life, my thoughts on writing, and my dog, find me on Twitter at CC Lepki Writes. And finally, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button so you'll know when the next video comes out. See you later!